Got it?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this story sharing session. I'm joined by Gary Knight. Do you want to say a quick hi, Gary?
Hello, everyone.
So for any of you that doesn't know me, I'm Emma Cooksey, and I am on the board of directors at Project Sleep. So I love to get involved with whatever they're doing. I'm also the host of the Sleep Apnea Stories podcast, which is actually how I met today's Gary, but we'll talk more about that in a little while. So I'm going to do a quick intro in a second, but a couple of housekeeping things I want to cover. So if you're listening and you want to ask any questions, go ahead and type them in and I'll kind of keep a look on that and we can ask Gary any questions you have. The other thing is, after this live finishes, we'll be posting it on the Project Sleep Facebook page. So that's public. And if you have any comments you want to make as we're going, that's know that they're going to be available publicly. So you don't want to, share anything that's private in there that you don't want to be public. The other thing is we definitely are not giving any medical advice. So we're going to definitely be talking about experiences with sleep conditions. But if anything that Gary says makes you think, oh, that's some symptoms I'm having or somebody in your life is having, then that's a great thing to take to your doctor. So telling you to start or stop any treatments or medications or anything. So I'm going to just go ahead and introduce Gary to you. So we are old friends. Gary was one of the first people that I interviewed on my podcast back in the day. So we've been friends ever since. So a little bit about Gary. Gary Knight is a professional gardener and a keen photographer from the UK. He was diagnosed at the age of 50 with obstructive sleep apnea. Gary runs the Southern UK Sleep Apnea and CPAP Facebook group and is a trained speaker with Project Sleep's Rising Voices program. He aims to help as many people as possible through awareness and experience of this serious sleep disorder. So without further ado, I'm going to let Gary take over and I will be back partway through to share some slides for you. Right, Gary?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Okay, well, thank you for this invitation. And I'm excited to share my story and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. I was born in Enfield, North London in September of 1966. And my parents relocated to a small town called Andover in Hampshire when I was about a year old. We lived on an estate. I have a younger brother and a sister. Childhood was simple and happy, with me being a typical boy who loved exploring, making camps, climbing trees, and all manner of general mischief. So my journey with obstructive sleep apnea, I believe, started in my early 30s. Looking back, I was presenting signs of it, and I remember falling asleep when grass cutting on a lawn tractor, which was preceded by a feeling of overwhelming tiredness and constant yawning. One day this happened, I found myself on the edge of a deep ditch after drifting off. I could have suffered a very serious injury or worse had I not woken up. At the time I was young, I was working 7 days a week, so I put it down to overwork. However, it did raise some concerns and I was tested for Lyme's disease and farmer's lung, both of which were negative. So I just carried on and sleep apnea was not even considered at that point. So the problems really started for me in 2014 with symptoms of fatigue, exhaustion, diabetes symptoms, bladder problems, and my weight continued to increase until I found myself at about 280 pounds, just under 20 stones in weight. Snoring was always an issue and it was getting worse, much worse, and someone described me as a bear in a cave. So in the summer of 2015, things went downhill fast. I was starting to fall asleep at work, at home, and even a haircut would find me sliding off into sleep. I remember once quite vividly being brought a cup of tea by a customer at about 10 in the morning in my shed at work. I was still there at lunchtime, asleep. My wife had noticed that I'd stopped breathing as well when asleep, and that was a big red flag. At the time, sleep apnea was still an unknown for me, and I'd never heard of it. My denial of this also delayed my diagnosis by many years, and being a big, strong man, admission that something was wrong just didn't happen. And we think I was untreated for at least 15 years. The fatigue I suffered was devastating. Daily life was increasingly difficult, and this went on for months. And at the age of 50, I began to think my life was coming to an end. Things were very, very bad, and every part of me was affected. I suffered raised blood pressure, glucose levels getting higher. The bladder problems were getting worse, and I had cognitive issues such as memory loss, brain fog, and mood swings. And unfortunately, my GP arranged a sleep test in early November of 2016, and it was confirmed that I had obstructive sleep apnea. And I was stopping breathing 29 times an hour, which is on the cusp of severe. My GP later informed me that because of the length of pauses, my oxygen levels were so low that I'm lucky to still be here. And that's very sobering indeed. I remember the consultant confirming my diagnosis and asking if there's anything I could do to improve my long-term outlook. He replied, well, you could lose a bit of weight, but this is probably as good as it gets for you, I'm afraid. And my only thoughts at that point were to make the necessary changes to improve my situation, which I did just to prove him wrong. So I took my diagnosis as a positive step, and because I now knew what was wrong, I could deal with it. Sleep apnea is a chronic condition that is highly disruptive and destructive. However, it is highly treatable with the correct therapy. Sleep apnea is a serious disorder that occurs when a person's breathing is interrupted during sleep. People with untreated sleep apnea stop breathing repeatedly during their sleep, sometimes hundreds of times a night. This means the brain and the rest of the body may not get enough oxygen. Due to this lack of oxygen, sleep apnea increases the risk of serious and even life-threatening health complications such as stroke, heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and depression. Sleep apnea affects people to varying degrees and can be mild, moderate, or severe. And according to a 2014 publication by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, 25% or more of adults may be affected by sleep apnea to some degree. Symptoms vary by person and may include sleepiness or lack of energy during the day or when driving. Even after a full night's sleep, you may not be aware of it, but your breathing problems may wake you several times during the night. Loud snoring, it may come and go through the night and may be loud enough to wake others near you. You may also occasionally wake up suddenly with a choking or gasping sensation. The snoring was something has always affected me, probably from my late teens. I've never had any gasping or choking. Disrupted nighttime sleep, including restless sleep, repeated awakenings, and or insomnia are also very common. For me, the months leading up to diagnosis were a living hell. The insomnia was keeping me up through the night, every night. Trips to the bathroom were constant. My wife also suffered staying awake, prodding me to restart my breathing when the snoring stopped. Morning headaches or dizziness. Well, scientists aren't quite sure why people with sleep apnea get these. It might be because of the poor sleep or lack of oxygen caused by the breathing problems. And headaches and dizziness were symptoms I never experienced. Waking up with a very sore or dry throat or dry mouth. This happens because sleep apnea often causes you to breathe in through your mouth. A dry mouth was usual for me, and I used to keep water by my bed to help with this. I now practice nasal breathing and use tape sometimes, which helps to keep my mouth shut while asleep. Nightmares. Some research has found a link between sleep apnea and bad dreams, but more research is needed. And the only nightmare for me was a living one. No dreams at all for me, and I still lack this feature in my programming. Cognitive and mental health impacts, anxiety and depression are very common with people with sleep apnea. The lack of sleep can lead to forgetfulness, brain fog, and mood swings. I had all of this. There are two forms of sleep apnea: obstructive sleep apnea, the more common of the two forms of apnea. It is caused by blockage of the airway, usually when the soft tissue in the back of the throat collapses during sleep. And central sleep apnea, unlike obstructive sleep apnea, in central sleep apnea, the airway is not blocked, but the brain fails to signal the muscles to breathe due to the instability in the respiratory control center. Medical providers can diagnose sleep apnea using an in-lab study, which typically measures your brainwaves, heart rate, breathing, and movement to determine a diagnosis. Sleep apnea can also be diagnosed using a home sleep apnea test, which allows you to sleep at home while a small monitor collects data. My diagnosis was achieved through pulse finger oximetry. The AHI is the apnea hypopnea index, which is the amount of pauses per hour of sleep. And in my case, 50% of my sleep, I was not breathing. The causes of sleep apnea vary between different people. There is no one size fits all. And treatment for this condition, symptom management varies widely by person, but may include various positive airway pressure devices such as CPAP, AutoPAP, or BiPAP are prescribed to push air into the airway and keep it open at night. Oral appliances are made by dentists who specialize in sleep dentistry. These devices prevent your airway from collapsing by holding your tongue in position or sliding your jaw forward. These are a good alternative for people with mild or moderate sleep apnea, but generally not recommended for severe cases. For some people, the anatomical structure of the airway is a factor, and the surgery to move the jaws forward and increase the width of the airway can resolve sleep apnea. Wakefulness medications are sometimes prescribed for people with excessive daytime sleepiness if they are using the CPAP every night as recommended. And for some people, a large weight gain can be a cause of sleep apnea. And for these people, weight loss can improve or eradicate their symptoms. For me, weight loss didn't cure me, but it did improve my life quality dramatically. More research is needed, but other therapies with people with sleep apnea find helpful include myofunctional therapy, positional therapy, and even didgeridoo playing. Coping strategies vary widely by person, but may include social support, such as meet up with social media groups, and improvement in general health through wellness, through sleep hygiene, diet, and fitness. So I received my CPAP machine 3 days after being diagnosed. And here is where I consider myself very, very fortunate, as I took to it with few problems. Aside a few mask leaks, everything was okay, and I was sleeping like a baby. The snoring too disappeared as if by magic. After a few days on CPAP, I realized just how badly obstructive sleep apnea had been affecting me. And my response to CPAP was quick, and I felt the benefits within a week. For me, CPAP is a total life changer and life giver. And there is no doubt that without my little machine, the outcome would have been possibly very different, maybe even tragic. And it's a love-hate relationship with the leaks, the strap marks, drive us all crazy, but it gives us the energy to keep fighting. So in early 2017, I contacted a local personal trainer called Andre Diona, who runs a private gym locally to myself. We met briefly to discuss my options and how we move forward to get me to a better state of health. So I commenced my training shortly after and worked hard for 6 months. And my weight dropped from 127 kilograms to 97 kilograms, which is about 15 stones. And also taking 2.5 inches from my neck size, from I think it was from 18.5 to 16 inches. A subsequent retest showed my AHI gone from 29 to 11. So it dropped me into the mild category. Seeing my sleep nurse for the results, she was visibly shocked on my appearance, asking me how I'd achieved this. And my reply was simply, because they told me this was not possible. So I work out at home and gym, and there was no way I could have achieved this without my diagnosis and CPAP, because due to living with exhaustion. So I have an elliptical, an air bike and assorted weights at home, and I've focused on cardio to improve my cardiovascular system, as I believe this is a key part to managing my sleep apnea. This has not been without setbacks, and I have a badly arthritic right foot, a worn out right knee. I've injured my left shoulder, but by far the worst was in February 19 when I suffered a DVT in my left leg, just above my knee to my mid-calf area, and that's certainly something I don't wish to repeat. In August of 2019, after suffering a loss of strength and general feeling of low mood, loss of focus and dragging my heels, I contacted my GP to discuss low testosterone. Subsequent tests revealed I had very low levels. So an MRI scan was instructed and performed to check pituitary function. And sadly, this revealed the telltale signs of hydrocephalus, which is fluid on the brain. This was understandably very upsetting, and I was now facing brain surgery, which, no thanks. So I had numerous neurological appointments that followed, and more scans looking for tumours, which thankfully were not present. I discussed various options with my neurosurgeon, and because I have minimal symptoms with the occasional flare-up, a closely monitored approach with a get on with life direction was suggested. No one knows how long this has been present or if it will cause me future problems, but I strongly suspect that sleep apnea has had a hand in the mix somewhere. None of these setbacks have stopped me though, and have made me even more determined. And I've even managed marathon distance on an elliptical and taken part in a charity fundraiser, pedaling an assault bike for an hour, and that over £2,000 was raised for that. Now, throughout my journey, I've referred to sleep apnea as my passenger, and if it wants to stay, it's in for a rough ride. Even issuing utter contempt with the use of my middle finger in the gym mirrors, like know your place, OSA. So my desire to share my experience with others now is a passion, and I hope it offers hope to anyone newly diagnosed that they too can possibly lead a normal life with a chronic condition. I created a Facebook support group called Southern UK Sleep Apnea and CPAP, which was originally just for a local network for sufferers. That quickly outgrew my original idea, and I renamed the group to cover a wider area. Once a month, I put posts out on local selling pages and all over the UK, just to gain new members and get the word out there. And we are currently over 2,000 strong. Even though I still have sleep apnea, it still no longer affects my daily life. I'm told that I've inspired and changed many lives, which continues to drive me forward and help as many people as possible. I'm just an ordinary guy who decided to fight back against a devastating condition. And although not completely cured, I now have my life, energy and the desire to be the best I can be. It's been hard work, but worth every ounce of effort. I'm now thriving on CPAP therapy and living again, working hard, gaining new experiences and friends. And I love CPAP because it has returned to me what this awful condition took away. Because of the myths and misperceptions surrounding sleep apnea, many people with this serious disorder have not been diagnosed or received treatment. One study showed an average of a 7-year delay between the time a person with sleep apnea recognizes one or more of the symptoms and when they receive a referral for a sleep study. You do not have to be older, male, or obese to have sleep apnea. You don't even have to snore. Anyone, including children, young adults, can be affected. Through my own denial, I remained untreated for too long. This has been utterly devastating to my mind and body and has left me with life-term complications. Sharing my story may give hope to someone less fortunate than myself and is vital to raise awareness. If it jolts just one person into being checked, then I am happy. One clear message is if you suspect a sleep disorder, do a symptom check and get tested. Living with sleep apnea and leading a normal life is achievable for many people, but getting prompt diagnosis is so important. If left, serious health conditions can develop. And I say very simply, bad sleep equals bad health. Simple. I'm sharing my story today as part of the Rising Voices, a program of the non-profit organisation Project Sleep, which empowers patient advocates to share their stories and improve public understanding of sleep disorders. Thank you for listening to my story.
Yay! Well done, Gary. Let me just come back. Thank you so much for.
We got there.
Yeah. So I have so many questions in the chat too, I know. There was a couple of things that I feel like, so for people that don't know me, I'm originally from the UK as well. So I knew what you were talking about with a few things, but I think that one of the things that when we first talked, I didn't quite get what you were talking about was what you call a lawn tractor and what I think Americans called a ride-on lawnmower. So you actually fell asleep on riding a ride-on lawnmower.
That was common. That wasn't once or twice. That used to happen every week.
Yeah.
And I remember
so dangerous.
I remember that vividly. So I remember that vividly because actually when I woke up, I turned around and I'd gone down the slope and I'd zigzagged all the way down. Scary.
Yeah, really scary. And then I feel like you went from, so then I weighed this much and I lost this amount. I think you did part of it in stone. So can you tell us in pounds how much weight you lost?
I think it was about just under 70 pounds, I think, so I can't remember.
Yeah. Which is an inordinate amount of weight to lose. And I think a lot of people with sleep apnea are told this advice from their doctor, you know, go away and lose weight, and that might help your symptoms. But you actually did it. And I think that one of the things that's really inspiring to me is that you, like, I think oftentimes people kind of think, well, that's someone else who, you know, I've got a sore knee and a, you know, like injuries and different things. But do you want to tell people just a little bit about how you started off and how slowly you went in the beginning?
Yeah, well, when I first started, I bought a cross trainer, and my idea was just to go, you know, and get myself as fit as possible. I could only do a couple of minutes when I first started, and using what we call progressive overload, where you add extra time as you go. So 1 week you'll do 2 minutes, the next week you'll do 2.5 minutes, and keep building like that. I ended up doing a marathon on it. Never again. I remember I wasn't planning to do it. I used to get on it on a Sunday morning, and I was planning to do 18 miles on this thing. And I got to 18 miles and I thought, oh, I'm going to keep going. And I remember I got to 21 miles and my thighs went into spasm and my legs are shaking. So I just kept going. I just pushed through it. It just never again.
Wow.
For me,
so one of the comments in the chat was about how I think you kind of said like that this affected your job and your personal life, but was that like down to like your mood especially, or just being tired all the time? Like, what were the main things that were
just being
impacting?
devastated by tiredness and fatigue,
Yeah,
exhaustion. That you can't function properly. No way.
no.
No.
And
I,
so how did that go at work? Like, you just had to kind of do the best you could, and your colleagues kind of knew that.
well, I work on my own. 9 times
Right
out of 10,
on.
so it's only me that sees me.
You work on your own at chopping all the, like, I see all of your pictures that you post on Instagram, and they're like, you work in these huge houses with big,
Yeah,
like hedges for miles. So you do
that's
that on your own?
what I do. Yeah, yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Okay. So you just were doing your best, and
yeah, yeah, yeah. Just kept going. I must have
yeah,
been running adrenaline or something. I don't know what it was, but I kept going.
yeah. I think sometimes looking back when you're undiagnosed, you just kind of do whatever you have to do, even when you're really struggling.
Well, I think
So another thing I wanted you to kind of speak to people about was, oh yeah, so a lot of people, this is after a long time, and you know, not many people start a Facebook group, right? So I guess I want to understand like your motivation to help other people and
yeah.
where that came from.
Well, that was actually born of being forgotten by my clinic. They lost me off their system, and I thought, well, I was on my own with this. No, I had no follow up, nothing. So I was working out for myself. But I thought, what if people can't do that? So I started the group. So it was started locally with the original idea of keeping local people. So it was a hub for that. But it just went mad, and I just changed it, and now it's wherever it is.
Just because the need you were seeing was so much, like people were asking for help, and
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I would have asked for help if it was there, but I didn't have it, so I had to work it myself. But some people can't do that. They need that guidance. And with the group I created, I also welcome family members as well, because they need support too, because they're going through it as well as the person that's suffering.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think sometimes people overlook that. And the other thing I was going to say to you is there anything, I know in some ways it has to come from the person, but I talk all the time to people who have family members, especially husbands, who, I think you kind of described it like you were stubborn and you didn't want to go and get tested for this. Is there anything you would say to those people to encourage them to go and get tested?
Well, my biggest thing was denial. And when I talk to people now, I actually refer to it as the circle of denial. And if you stay inside that little circle, you don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
As soon as you step outside of that, you can then work on the problem. But all the time you stay in there, that's where you are. That's all I can say.
And I think it starts with like getting out of the denial, right? It starts with saying, I have a problem and I need help.
Yeah, it's no different to an alcoholic or anyone like that. You know,
Right.
once you admit that problem, you can then move forward. If you don't, you're stuck.
And then another question I had to ask you, even though I know the answer, is how did you find out about Project Sleep's Rising Voices program? And tell us a bit about your experience.
Yeah, that might have been you by some coincidence.
I kind of told you to do it.
It's been great. We've had a good time. I feel sorry for poor Lauren with my lack of multitasking skills at the moment.
Lauren loves it.
Yeah,
so for any of you listening, Lauren is our program manager at Project Sleep. And so for people that sign up to do the Rising Voices program, which is exactly what Gary did, Lauren's the one that kind of coaches you through this whole experience. And I've done the program. I really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. So I hope a lot of you will do that in future years. So was there anything else, Gary, before we wrap up?
Unless you got anything else?
I think you answered all the things I was going to ask you. Did you want to just tell us a little bit about some of your amazing gym accomplishments?
Oh, do I have to? Well,
Yeah.
look. I mean, I've had to adapt what I do now. I used to like the functional fitness side of things, but now I've had to
Yes.
adapt because of my knee. It's bone on bone
Right.
and other bits and pieces. So, but it's not stopped me.
Yeah.
One of my favourite things. I'll go in usually on a Wednesday night and I'll do 30k on the exercise bike before I do a weight session. That's what I do. I can still do it. So I've gone from a complete beginner at the age of 50.
Yeah.
Now I'm this monster.
Yeah. Like I just, for anybody that's not following you on Instagram, they should go and follow you because I don't know, like even in the time that I've known you, the amount of weight that you're now
I mean,
lifting.
when I started, I'd had an idea what I could do, and that's gone through the window.
Yeah.
I mean,
just shattered it all.
My heaviest deadlift to date is 170 kilograms. I'm not sure what that is in pounds.
That's a lot.
Yeah, my bench press is 130 kilograms. And it's scary.
It just shows you it's never too late. You can start anytime.
57.
Just go do it, people.
Yeah.
You've inspired me to get up and go and exercise.
Yeah. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going.
Well, that is great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, Gary.
Thanks, Emma.
All right. Have a good one. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in.